Awesome. Welcome back. I have Dan Aaron with me. He was on an episode, I think it was 40 or 41 on rewiring for resilience. He talked about his journey from having a fractured neck and then healing that and understanding the body at a deeper level. And now we're going to be talking about mold exposure and then mold recovery. So this is something new and that is more recent for you. So my first question is like, how did you find out and what was that first step that you took?
Yeah, so it was a pretty crazy process. Um, so for me, this started in June. That was when I got exposed. We don't exactly know what it is. I have my theories, and I think it's a good theory. But what essentially happened was I was doing some training for martial arts, and I was trying to train like more like defensive reflexes. And I discovered something on YouTube where there are people who have videos of them like throwing punch to the camera. You can like practice the defense. And then
Oh.
as I was like really like focused on it, I started to notice like my eyes were getting strained. And
Mm.
and I started getting sensitive to light and screens. And I assumed it was because of that.
Mhm.
And that light sensitivity got worse. And eventually it got to the point where I could not look at my phone screen at all. It hurt my eyes. And
Oh.
then a few days later, it reached a point where I literally could not open my eyes in daylight. And
Wow.
it was that severe. It was like I had to walk around my apartment with a sleep mask and like walk around like blindfolded. And I would like peek every now and then so I could like do things and cook and whatnot. But it became just a complete disaster. I ended up going to the emergency room. They found nothing, and
Wow.
then I was pretty much blind for 2 days.
Wow.
And and then all of a sudden, on the second day, just of resting my eyes, all of a sudden, I opened my eyes and they were feeling pretty good. Then I massaged some of my eye muscles, and then I felt good. And then I had 8 days where I felt really healthy, and
Mm.
then it started going down again. And
Mm.
then it went to the point where I could not open my eyes in light again.
Wow.
And and that went on for like another few weeks, and then I had some rest, and then had another couple of days of feeling good, and then it happened again. And yeah, and the main symptom was just light sensitivity. And I, like most people, like when we think of like mold exposure, usually we think of like respiratory or immune system.
Mm.
And so what I've learned is that there are different strains of mold, and these strains of mold emit spores. And within those spores, those like the seeds, there's something called mycotoxins in some of those strains. And
Mhm.
those mycotoxins are what affect the body, and they cause all these different health effects.
Mhm.
And so some strains, like black mold, tends to be more respiratory, tends to
Mhm.
be more immune system, more physiological. But
Mhm.
there are some strains, like the one I was exposed to, mine was aspergillus, which is actually neurological. And
Mhm.
so my symptoms were mostly light sensitivity.
Mhm.
I did a lot. My other symptoms I had anxiety, and I would get like TMJ, and I had TMJ like before I broke my neck, and then when
Mhm.
I did the whole rehab, my TMJ went away.
Mhm.
But so it came back, and then I would have like occasional like focus issues and concentration things, but it wasn't anything really major. The biggest thing was light sensitivity. And so I never thought of that being a mold symptom, but it definitely
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. I've only had like a handful of patients that have confirmed their mold exposure before. Like it's um it's something that like I feel like if I can't figure out a case or if they're not recovering well, that always comes into the picture of like
Yeah.
especially living in San Diego and even in Hawaii where there's just a lot of moisture everywhere,
Yep.
especially if they're living near the beach or like close to the water in any capacity. It's like
Mhm.
always in my mind of like, maybe that's, a part of it. But I've
Absolutely.
only had a handful that actually confirmed it and it like it debilitated their life. Like they ended up moving. There's one specific case where I remember they ended up moving and it almost cleared all the symptoms immediately. So it's fascinating like and I feel like what I've found through some of these cases is that It sounds like you caught it like early on, or like you figured it out early on, where sometimes it takes people they go through
It's-
so much testing to figure out it's mold, and then they look in their house and they're like, what is going on? Like it's everywhere. So,
Mhm. Yes.
how would you, well, I guess like,
How did I figure it out, or how would you tell?
yeah, how did you figure out so fast? Like,
Yeah.
why do you think you figured it out so fast versus it going on for so long? Like, my perspective would be you have a lot of awareness of your body. So, like,
Yeah.
you know when something's off. But from your
Yeah.
perspective, like, what?
It took us 6 weeks to figure it out,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is a very short period of time, because
Yeah.
some people can go years.
Yeah.
Um, what really helped for me is one, I'm already a problem solver. That's
Mhm.
so I was already like thinking about it immediately. But the other thing was, and this is actually really important, is all my aspects of health were extremely dialed in. I was dialed in nutritionally, I was dialed in with fitness, I was dialed in with my emotions and my inner work. Um, I was going outside, eating very nutritious organic food. So there was not a lot of options as far as like what it could be, because everything I was doing was pretty much on point health wise. And so just me being on point health wise meant that there had to be something else. So it was like, okay, when this happened, it was like, okay, why is a healthy 32-year-old male experiencing this, and why is he not recovering?
Mhm.
And one of the things that we kind of went to was a COVID injury. Thought maybe because I had one vaccine, maybe, and I did have COVID at one point. So I was like, maybe there's some sort of adverse effects from that. And
Mhm.
so we reached out. I have a guy in my network who does COVID injuries and helps people like repair their DNA and stuff. So we went to him and tried his stuff, and that didn't work. And we were just kind of going through like what it could be. And I
Mhm.
was fortunate I had a friend who lived in mold for 2 years, and she was really helpful through this process because I couldn't use my eyes. So she would help me order things on Amazon. She would come over and help out. And
Mhm.
so she was really awesome with the process. But because she lived in mold for 2 years, she was also very sensitive and very highly attuned.
Mhm.
And one day she came over, and she had to get through traffic, and she persevered to like come over. And then
Mhm.
she got it. She's like, I smell mold. And I go, whoa. And then she revealed to me that she would get headaches every time she came to my place.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, it hit me. I was like, oh my God, because my bathroom was starting to get like a mildew smell. And I just started getting this intuition like something in my apartment was the problem.
Mhm.
And I had an experience where I was looking into moving because fortunately, my lease was like a month from ending. So that was very fortunate. And went to go look at places, and I was feeling good. And the more I was outside, the better I felt. And then when I came back to my apartment, then I
Mhm.
got worse. And then I had a moment where my eyes gave out and I couldn't open my eyes and light again. This
Yeah.
was after driving 30 minutes and back.
Wow.
And so I was starting to get a sense like it had to be something in my apartment. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe it was just there's a lot of reflective appliances, a lot of windows, and got direct
Mhm.
sunlight, and maybe it was just too much. But
Mhm.
when she said it was mold, it was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And she had good instinct. She's like, we gotta get you out of here.
Yeah.
So she brought me out at my place and drove me to her place. All
Mhm.
I brought was like a couple pairs of clothes, and
Wow.
she's driving me to her apartment. And it's like 30 minutes away. I was living in Vista. She was in Rancho Pengasquitos. It's like near
Okay.
Poway.
Yeah.
And as we like pull into like the parking lot of her place, and I couldn't use my eyes at all. All of a sudden, I noticed I'm like, my eyes feel better.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh.
Yeah.
And so I stay over at her place. And one of the shirts I brought was a shirt that I had just washed and that had been drying.
Mm.
And I was wearing that, and she walked by. She's like, "Your shirt has a moldy smell." And I'm
Wow.
like, "Interesting." The next day, um, I she apparently left it with some wet clothes. She asked me to get into the hot tub just to jacuzzi to wash myself off because she didn't want the mold in my apartment.
Ah, wow. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And next day, I go to smell my shirt and I smell it, and it's super strong, like moldy smell. And my light sensitivity got bad instantly. Like
Interesting.
it went from like starting to get better to like really bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I would blow my nose out and like get a little bit better. And I'm
Yeah.
like, huh. So it became very clear. It's like, okay, it
Yeah.
is mold.
Yeah.
We need to get out of my apartments. So I ended up getting a sublet. She helped me like organize a sublet, and
Yeah.
I say funny. I stayed one night at a hotel, and
Uh-huh.
that hotel had mold.
Oh my gosh.
I remember I go to the
I'm
front.
not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because
It's
it's like, come
ironic,
on,
yeah,
really? Like,
yeah. It was so crazy. It was like, okay, ooh, there's like the door and there's a curtain. I'm like, okay, time to get some fresh air. I open the I
oh,
open the sliding door. I take a whiff, and all I smell is mold.
oh my
Oh,
gosh.
you gotta be kidding me! But I
Yeah.
could tell it's a different type of mold because my I didn't get light sensitivity. I started coughing.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, you're like distinguishing the mold based off of like your symptoms. Because like I would
Yeah.
say majority of people know like a mildewy smell. Like that's
Yes.
like a pretty common thing. Even like in the Midwest too, like basements are kind of mildewy just because it's in the ground. If there's flooding, it gets into the basement. Things
Very
aren't.
dark. It's
Yeah,
loud.
exactly. And then
Mm.
near oceans too, there can be like that mildewy problem. I've
Yeah.
noticed um, something too. When I was in San Diego, I lived in a place that was built in the 70s and they put in carpet, which I found really fascinating and also like not very smart because it just housed so much mold. And I like that's my first exposure that I had too. And I don't know if I had direct symptoms because I didn't actually like test myself for anything. But so you're distinguishing the mold based off of like a symptom, like can you like also smell it too? And like, how would you distinguish them?
The way you distinguish them officially would be to get them tested. And
Yeah.
so you would get it tested. You can do your own like self test. Like I actually have a little at home like mold testing kit right here. It's
Ah,
like
okay.
little
Yep.
dishes, and you can
Uh-huh.
swab it, or you can do like an air test.
Uh-huh.
And see how much mold's in your place, and you can then send to a lab to then see what strain it is, and they can test it and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, different molds have different symptoms. Most molds are not even dangerous and don't have mycotoxins, but
Yeah.
I think there's like six strains that do, and so black mold is the one you get when you have water leaks. Like that's
Mhm.
a big one, and then
Mhm.
aspergillus is that usually grows on like plants and stuff. Like it's
Mhm.
not normal to get like aspergillus exposure is
Mhm.
way less common, which is
Mhm.
why you don't usually hear as much about light sensitivity.
Mhm.
But but yeah, it can happen. So you would differentiate. You would go to a laboratory, and you can also um, you can also take tests. Like there are blood tests you can take to see the
Mhm.
different antibodies that your body's
Mhm.
reacting to, and there's also a mycotox test, which is where you test your urine and you can see what your body is detoxing from.
Mhm.
But it's really important if you take a mycotox test that you work with someone who's really experienced, because a lot of times you can get mycotoxin. There are mycotoxins in your foods. Like if you consume like really like just meat that's like very factory farmed and not like taken care of, like a lot of times those meats can have mold in them and you won't even
Mhm.
realize. And sometimes even fruits and stuff can have like aspergillus and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's if you take the mycotox, you want to get someone who's really experienced with reading those tests, because there's some mycotoxins that you don't normally see in food and some you do. And so they need to be able to differentiate. But
Mhm.
yeah, the best way is really to get it tested. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. And there was another place that I was actually working at that we all thought there was mold or something was going on because there was a smell. And I actually had some patients too that were just commenting on really weird, odd symptoms around that time. And I even thought about getting like a petri dish and like seeing what's in the air, but I didn't
Mm.
end up doing that. But yeah, that's interesting that you're able to like you're sensitive to it now. Like you can like kind of like your friend as well. Like she could smell it. and not always like a mildewy smell, but just like something is going on. And that was something that I've seen like a video on as well as like dogs that are trained.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
they
Mhm.
come into the house and they'll actually like kind of like a drug dog. Like they come in
Yeah,
and they sniff and they smell like where the mold would be at, which is
yeah.
really awesome that you're able to do that without having to like tear down people's houses because usually it's like in the wall as well. So it's like, you know, how do you really uncover that unless you have some sort of like testing in place? Um, so with where you're at now, since it's like recent, do you feel like you're recovered? Like, or are you still like seeing like differences or changes now because of it?
Yeah, it's it's been a pretty yeah, complex journey. A lot of adversity. It's gone through swings, it's gone through ups and downs. Um it's gone through I've had days where my light sense is really good, and then I've had days where I've gone worse, and
Mhm.
it changes through different factors. And um yeah, I wouldn't say I'm fully recovered. I'm definitely better, and we've had some really big breakthroughs in the last couple of weeks. Um, turns out there was a colonization happening in my sinuses.
Wow.
And so that's can happen with people with mold, is that it can actually inhabit their bodies and
Mm-hmm.
start growing. And so that's, I think when I smelled this shirt, that maybe that's when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's been a really up and down process. And it's been very random and unpredictable because when you get out of the mold, when you get out of a moldy environment and your body knows it's safe, it'll start to detox.
Yeah.
And so when the body doesn't have a way to get rid of toxins, or there's just you're in a toxic environment, what your body will do is it'll store toxins in fat cells.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way to keep it out of the bloodstream so that those toxins don't affect the body. And so once I got out of that environment, after like a few weeks of feeling better, I would have random days where I would just get really bad light sensitivity again. And I would just it would be so bad I could not open my eyes. I'd have to keep them covered all day.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that through testing, the best way to the best thing to do is when my light gets that bad is to start doing a workout
Mm, yeah.
because it gets the blood flowing, gets the sweat going. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I started developing a detox routine. And I was first recommended to take binders, but for me, those were really intense. Do you know what binders are?
I'm familiar, like maybe not specifically to mold, but
Okay.
just in general, like yeah, you definitely want to be binding it because you can like pour it out into your blood, like into your blood, and then if you don't bind it, it just circulates and then it creates like even more problems. And I've actually experienced that myself. So even with parasites too, it's interesting if you don't extract them, you're extracting them out of the like intestinal lining, but if you don't really extract them out of the body, then they just can create all sorts of like almost like mental issues too, what I've noticed. But
Yeah, it's just prolonged. Your body will detox naturally, but
mhm,
sometimes it needs a little bit of help. And so
mhm,
what binders do is they're like magnets essentially. It's
mhm.
like you take them and they attract the toxins. And it's like a magnet. So it pulls it out of wherever they're being stored.
Mhm.
And that is in the long run it's good because then you get rid of it and then your
Mhm.
body will sweat it out and
Mhm.
then you'll be rid of it. But while you're sweating it out, everything feels worse. And I drank a charcoal drink,
Mhm.
and it was actually kind of disastrous because I my symptoms, this is when I was staying in the sublet. I was like, it's like a few weeks being removed from the exposure. My symptoms were like 90% gone. I was feeling pretty good. And I drank a charcoal drink, thinking that would just make me feel better because I drank other detox stuff and felt better. And
Mhm.
the next day drank it like a Monday night. The next day I woke up, really bad headache, just like
Mhm.
horrible headache, really
Mhm.
bad light sensitivity.
Mhm.
And I pushed through it, and I was like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'm
Mhm.
fine.
Mhm.
And the next day, still had it. And that Thursday felt even worse. And then that day, my eyes like gave out. And then I reached a point where I could not open my eyes and light again. And it took me another like 2 weeks to like get back to where it was.
Mhm.
And it was just stressful. And it was like the day before I moved into a new place, and
Oh,
like had to like move all my stuff and like not be able to use my eyes. It was just
oh my
a
gosh.
complete disaster.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry you went through all of that. Like, and because sometimes the body just needs like space and time to heal, but also it needs that environment as well. Like it's really hard to heal in an environment that like created it. And that's something that I've like really learned with hormones and I mean just all like the whole body itself. Um and I actually recently had an experience with tea. Like I drank quite a bit of tea, and I had one where I've been drinking it for months, but I think it like my body was like, okay, you've had enough with the tea, because I just had extreme nausea. Like it was horrible, and I was like, whoa, okay, like I need to hold off on this because I think like yeah, I think like what happens is that it sometimes those things like if either the body's not able to handle it or you are like pulling stuff out and it's not able to excrete at that moment, it will create like yeah, like an immediate response. And so and yes, like the storage in the fat cells. So that's what like I kind of dug into that when I first started digging into like gluten sensitivities with thyroid problems in undergrad and kind of just did my own research and would present it to people and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this? You think it's like true?" And um what I what I started to really kind of question was, is it really the gluten or is it the chemicals that's on all of our food? And so that's obviously a big thing that I think we're going to see change soon, or
Mhm.
hopefully
Yeah.
we'll see change. But that's the same concept as like when we ingest chemicals, it gets stored in the fat cells. And so to like
Yep.
detox it, you almost have to like, yeah, experience this horrible response, like almost like you're sick again, like a
Yep.
sickness.
That's
And
what it is.
I think like detoxing is deeper than cleansing. I've also been trying to understand the differences of those, but I think like yeah, like if you detox, like I think it's important to like surround yourself with other people too, because it could just take one simple thing and then you're like it throws you over, or it could be too much for the system and it can create all sorts of like different symptoms.
Yeah.
So like with mold specifically, like what are some of the things I saw some things on Instagram and I know you posted about them, but what are some of the things that you've done or that you're doing now to help, I would say like re-strengthen your system to like detox and like cleanse itself so it doesn't have these responses?
Yeah. So first I tried binders, and that was just too intense for me. I've tried a few different ones, but mostly sweating. So I changed my routine to I started working out 6 days a week, and I would do hot tub 5 days a week.
Wow.
And then I would take hot showers, really hot showers. And
Wow.
so I created this pretty much this effect where I just was sweating every day, sweating constantly. I had this goal of this is not realistic or scientifically realistic, but in my mind, I have to replenish all the water in my body every single day. So I have to
Ah,
like get rid of all of it and replenish it. And so I just had this,
yeah.
that was like my mindset. And so I
Yeah.
just kept working out really hard,
Yeah.
running, weight training, wind sprints, like different things, and then just
Yeah.
sweating like crazy. I'd
Mhm.
wear like even like warm sweatshirts while walking outside. I would work out in sweatshirts
Yeah.
and hot tubs. So that was really important, was the sweating,
Mhm.
because you don't necessarily always need a binder. They're helpful because it tracks everything comes out, but for me it was too intense. But just the sweating and just constantly sweating, your body when it sees that you're sweating constantly, it goes, "Oh, we can get rid of some stuff now."
Mhm.
And one mistake I made when I took the charcoal was I didn't do a lot of sweating, which meant the toxins stayed in my body longer.
Mhm.
So by doing more sweating, it allowed my body to get rid of them. And when I would have symptoms, that would be a sign I need to be more aggressive. I need to sweat even more. So that was really big. The second thing that was really helpful was the hyperbaric chamber. That was like 4 days recovery in one session.
Wow.
It was really powerful. And I think for me, there was probably some healing that needed to happen with my eyes.
Mhm.
And the hyperbaric chamber was really helpful. And it's great for a lot of things because when you oxygenate the body, then it improves everything metabolism, detoxing, yeah, healing. So that was really big. Um, Another thing is being really alkaline. I
Mhm.
would find that when I was acidic, that my symptoms would get way worse.
Mhm.
And like during the first part of the process, I was starting to eat out a lot
Yeah.
because, yeah, I just wasn't cooking my own food. And I had this moment where my friend made me some green juice and my symptoms were really bad and I drank it and they went down like 70%,
Wow.
like after like a few gulps. And I
Mhm.
was like, what is
Mhm.
going on?
Mhm. Mhm.
So being really alkaline is really important. So that's been a big thing. And now I'm eating lots of vegetables. The cucumber, I thought I had a cucumber here, but I'm always eating lots of vegetables. So my vegetable intake has gone up a lot. I'm drinking green juices,
Yeah.
so my body will stay alkaline, and that reduces my stress. And when your body's alkaline, it's harder for mold to live. It's harder for microorganisms to live in your body. It's more ideal for your immune system in general to be alkaline for
Mhm.
so many functions. So
Mhm.
that was a really big thing. Um, what else? Nervous system regulation.
Mhm.
That is huge
Mhm.
because if your body's not calm, then it's not going to work properly. And so all
Mhm.
the functions of healing and restoration, I think we talked last time about the vagus nerve and all that. Like that's all super important. And mold in general, like, is a trauma. Like it's a
Mhm.
traumatic experience.
Mhm.
And so there has to be a lot of work to keep yourself calm, keep yourself regulated, keep yourself relaxed. Because the more relaxed you are, the faster your body is going to heal.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that's been really big is just, yeah, being really relaxed. So I'd say those are like the big things. And then I
Mhm.
have lots of like mold cleaning products and
Mhm.
different cool little products. Like
Mhm.
this this is really awesome. Um, they're
Oh.
anti-mold candles,
Uh-huh.
and you burn them, and it actually takes out the mold spores out of the air.
Interesting. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I'll put this like in the bottom of my shower
Ah. Uh-huh.
because even like I'm so sensitive, like mildew even affects me,
Yeah.
and so I'll put it in my shower and then open the door to my room and then just let it just
Right.
circulate throughout the entire place, and I find my
Yeah.
symptoms are really reduced by this. That's been
Mm.
really big. Um, And then, yeah, just lots of different cleaning products, making sure that your place stays really clean. Because one of the things I've noticed is that my immune system it's much more sensitive than it used to be,
Mm. Mhm.
way more sensitive.
Mhm.
And like I had a situation like a month ago where I got stranded because I went to go to this event that was in Pacific Beach and by the beach, a little bit more moldy. And I
Mm.
had some light sensitivity that day, but I wasn't feeling like that bad. I was like, oh, I'll just go. And as
Mhm.
soon as I got there, it was just a disaster. My symptoms got bad really fast, really bad light sensitivity.
Uh-huh.
And I pretty much like tried to drive like a couple miles away. And that
Uh-huh.
was like all my eyes had. And I had to phone a friend. He had to come pick me up, drive me to my
Oh,
place. And
oh,
then a couple days later, I had to take a lift and go pick up my car.
oh my gosh. I, I yeah, I like so I have like a few thoughts so like around all of that. It's interesting. There's so much moisture by the ocean. And when I lived like 2 blocks away from the ocean, that's where like all the mold stuff was happening for me. And then in Hawaii, it was almost like just keep your like there's just it's there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can't like
You're
avoid
on island. Yeah.
yeah. You're in the ocean at that point. So it's like there's moisture. Um, but I would say when I moved to to like San Marcos area, more in like the mountainous area, that started to kind of subside. I didn't notice, I wasn't noticed thinking about it as much. I don't know. So it's crazy how inland, like you don't have to go that far inland
Yeah,
from the ocean to experience like a difference, but say like vice versa. You go close to the ocean, you could have like an immediate response. And that's something
yeah,
that I've been like exploring with like chiropractic is trauma. Because a lot of people will come in because of maybe an actual injury or other types of traumas and such, but it does, I would say, increase like the sensitivity. And it's almost like that's like where I see like the regulation comes in. It's almost like how can you create like that resilience where you you're sensitive but you're strong where it's not like everything affects you anymore. And I feel like I don't know what else, there's so many different things, but sometimes it almost like just takes time, it seems like, for the body to like readjust and like reintegrate like everything that's happened.
mhm.
Uh, have you ever, and you don't have to share this if you don't want to, but have you ever had like injuries to your eyes or like to the face? Like I know we've talked about like the TMJ, but is there anything like in that? Yeah, so that's like so interesting because I mean, there's a few things I'm thinking like neurologically, but it's like, why does mold affect, we think of the lungs, like you said, or even the digestive tract potentially too, because there could be a lot of moisture in that area as well. And it's like a tract that connects to the outside. But like I mean, the eyes too, I guess, connect to the outside as well. So maybe it's like,
Yeah,
well,
like
some people get some symptoms and then some people get other symptoms.
yeah,
Like that's like I think
I've
that's why it goes so long, where people don't get a correct diagnosis or correct direction.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors to it. I do think it takes time. I do think reducing exposure is really important. That's why I like the candles a lot because it takes everything out of the bathroom in my room. And it says like it brings spore counts to essentially zero, which is you
Mhm.
don't won't even get that outside. And so
Mhm.
I think that is really helpful because the immune system is going to be in hyperdrive because of, especially if you're detoxing, it's like anytime it's like your body's trying to detox it, or it's in your body's going crazy. So your immune system's in this hyper reactive state. And so, yeah, nervous system regulation will help get it down, but there has to be a reduction of exposure for a period of time. And so that's pretty much what I'm trying to tackle right now is in addition to the symptom reduction is the sensitivity. And we'll see if what I'm doing is working. I know that I'm treating it with with some drops from the same company that actually makes the candles. It's Microbalance Health Products, and so I'm taking these drops that I'm spritzing into my sinuses, and that's been reducing my symptoms significantly,
Mhm.
and that's been extremely helpful. Um, and I haven't really tested the waters to see if I'm still sensitive. That's kind of a scary process. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to drive to the beach and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Though it's not all beaches, though. Some beaches I can go to. Um, but I guess as far as your questions affecting the eyes or how it affects different things, I thought at first like it might be just like the way I breathe. Like maybe if someone's more of a mouth breather, it goes to the
Mhm.
lungs, or if they're more nasal breather, then it goes somewhere else.
Mhm.
Goes more to the brain. I don't know how true that is, but um, I do know I have seen that specifically the eyes are affected by the sinuses.
Mhm.
And I don't exactly know the specific connection there, but it's pretty evident. And in general, the body, when things are anatomically close to each other, then they tend to affect one another.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know exactly, but it was strange because I've always had great eyes. Like my vision is 2010 to 2015.
Mhm.
So I've always have had great vision, and my vision actually still really good. My vision was never affected. It was actually just my ability to process and deal with light. So
Mhm.
it's interesting.
Mhm.
It's different mycotoxins. I don't know exactly how that affects different parts of the body, but that tends to be the case. And something that's also interesting, the reason the mycotoxins are there, or this is what scientists theorize, is so it can prevent competition from other microorganisms like bacteria.
Hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which makes sense. I mean, it's like survival. Everything
Yeah.
is ultimately trying to survive and replicate. We are too, that's kind of the whole life in general. So, yeah, I feel like it's like a new thing. I don't know. There's like not a lot of information on it. Like back like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Like I just feel like there's not a lot of information about mold, or maybe I just haven't really looked into it or like gone super deep into it, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot.
You got to find the right sources. It's kind of like holistic health where it's like it's hidden. If you know where to look, you can start to find it. But
Mhm.
it's not very well known. I also think mold tends to be more of like a modern day problem because mold always grows in nature, but
Mhm.
because the air is so open, you're never gonna breathe. You're really ever gonna breathe enough to get exposed, unless you're like living by a swamp or something.
Mhm.
So, these closed environments of us making these houses and not getting a lot of ventilation, that's how mold like really grows because then you have an environment that doesn't get sun, is not very ventilated, and then it's closed off. So then all the mold can grow and the spores can be released all in one place, and then you breathe in so much of it. But you're never going to get like that type of exposure from being outside generally. So I
Mhm.
do think that mold is kind of more of a modern day problem, like with buildings and houses and kind of the way things are constructed. I don't think that your people are getting lots of mold exposures in like the 1800s because everything was just more open.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And as the building structures sit there longer too, they probably start to attract,
Yes.
or if there's repairs that did not go correctly, or flooding, or living by an ocean, obviously, like there's those types of things too.
Yes, because all places, all houses like have some mold, they say, all buildings.
Mhm.
And my friend was telling me about they did a study where they would test different apartment buildings for mold, and they stopped testing apartments over 10 years old because all of them had mold.
Interesting. See, the place that I was living at, they tested it supposedly when I wasn't living there and said that there was no mold, but we could like physically see it. We're like, that is mold. There's
Yeah,
definitely mold here. So yeah,
they
the
never saw it in
testing
my place.
probably isn't accurate because no one maybe is doing it, or they're just kind of pushing it aside and saying, well, it's not harmful. It's not at a level of being harmful.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
that's
Not
like
all
their
mold
way
is
around it.
not all mold is at harmful level. It
Mhm.
has to reach a certain level, and it has to be a certain type of mold too that has mycotoxins.
Mhm.
But they never found mold in my apartment.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I know I had mold because I took a mycotox test, and now I'm waiting for the nasal swab test for my sinuses. I've been treating it anyways, and I've been getting better, so that's proof. But they never actually found mold in my apartment, and I think it was actually in my AC unit.
Mm.
And my apartment would have these large, like metal drums that would like sit outside the apartment, and those would be the air conditioning system that would bring in the air. And my complex had a lot of trees. And so a lot of times, like twigs and leaves, I'd see them fall on those fans.
Mm.
And inevitably, some would fall in. And then combined with a very rainy season, because mold needs moisture.
Okay, we're back. So yeah, you were mentioning the AC unit, leaves
Yeah.
dropping, which this is like very familiar to me. So if you remember exactly where you were, I would love for you to
Yeah.
like keep going.
Yeah. So we're saying that mold needs organic material it needs organic material to feed on, it needs water, it needs oxygen. So this is all living organisms need those three things. And so though my apartment had a lot of trees, so always I'd see leaves and branches falling on these giant like fans. And inevitably some would fall in. And then we had a very, very rainy spring. Just raining was like every night at least. So we had rain and it was just pretty cold overall. And I started getting symptoms when I started using the AC again to start cooling my room at night. And that's when everything kind of started. So My theory is that it was actually my AC unit, C unit, and that's why when I did a mold inspection, they found nothing. The mold inspector told me he let his 12-year-old daughter play in my apartment.
Oh. You're like, okay, thanks for being professional.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Americans to him.
Yeah.
He had like 120 like 5-star reviews on Yelp, but a little
Huh.
bit arrogant. But yeah, he found nothing in my apartment. He did an air sample test. He said the levels inside were even with the levels outside. But my theory is because when I left my place, I left all my windows open
Oh.
and for like a week. So I think my apartment had time to ventilate. And
Mhm.
without the mold source being in the apartment,
Mhm.
then yeah, it didn't like fill up again. So
Mhm. Yeah.
that's my theory is that was in my AC unit
Mhm.
because I never actually saw the mold. I had mildew in my bathroom, but mildew is not known to cause those sort of symptoms. So, and I did a mycotox test. And I know it's aspergillus.
Mhm.
So, yeah, my theory is that was in my AC unit.
Yeah.
Never saw the mold.
Yeah. So a place that I was at, that's kind of was our theory too, where it was like coming from the AC unit. And like yeah, see, I don't know like the whole process. Like I like the dogs, I've seen that, which I thought that was really like awesome that someone was doing that. Because yeah, if it's in the walls, does it really change like the air inside? Like say it's
If
like
you get exposed, yeah.
okay. So like
Because,
I was just thinking like say like your bed or a chair that you sit on a lot is like right next to a wall that has mold, but like the next room over doesn't have mold.
uh,
So like can you get exposed in that room over there or do you have to be like so directly close to it?
the thing
Or-
is, it has to be in the air.
yeah, okay.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because if we're gonna be exposed to it, we have to breathe it in.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's in the wall, it would somehow need to be exposed enough to be able to release the spores in the air. If the
Mm-hmm.
spores are released in the air, then
Mm-hmm.
we can breathe it in and then we can get exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's in a room with mold, they're more likely to get exposed than someone in the other room. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have a closed environment, if you're not ventilating enough, then
Yeah.
eventually it can affect everybody.
Mm-hmm. So what would be like one thing, like you even mentioned, like after you left, you went to a hotel and it was there. Even with traveling, Airbnbs, there's, so many things, people being even transient or moving and those types of things. Like what would be something that if someone wanted to be preventative, like is there something that someone that you would say they could do? I know you're not like an expert on this or anything like that, but just from your experiences so far, like what would you do, I guess? Like if now that you're like aware of this, like is there anything you would do or you just go off of like a symptom?
It's tricky because I'm actually about to deal with that because I'm going to do a cranial sacral therapy certification next week. I'm going to get Airbnb, and honestly, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Um, I was told there was a mold site that well where people test different hotel rooms and they report back, and so they'll tell you like which hotels are known to be really clean.
Oh,
So there are guides like that. Maybe I should look into that too. Um, what I'm gonna try to do is just choose an Airbnb where everyone says it's super clean. Uh,
yeah.
just has really good reviews. Maybe more expensive, not just go for the best deal, but yeah, find the one that's like super clean and then do that one.
Mhm.
But then I'll bring one of my mold candles just in case and
Mm.
burn it and just that way I know there's stuff cleared from the air. And
Mhm.
there's different things like yeah, there's like a little air detox thing. You spray
Oh,
the
mhm.
air has
Yeah.
basically has pure essential oils of eucalyptus, grapefruit, lime, lemon, and orange.
Yeah.
And citrus seed oils are very toxic to mold, so
Hmm.
they kill mold. I have an herbal shield. This you like put around your nose. It's supposed to kind of block and filter things better, what's coming in, but it also has a lot of essential oils that are good for mold.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then yeah, and just try to choose a really clean place. That's that's the best I can do.
Hmm.
I think most of the time, like unless you're freshly exposed and you're really sensitive, like you're probably going to be fine. Because honestly, I think um, the house, my house growing up had mold. We did get remediated when I was a kid, so I know that had mold. But generally, you're supposed to throw away all your stuff because the spores get all everywhere, and it's nearly impossible to clean up the spores because they're so tiny and there's so many of them. The point of a pen can hold 250,000 mold spores.
Wow.
So it's like they're invisible. So it's really hard to like get rid of them, like
Mhm.
once they're all over the place.
Mhm.
And my mom's a hoarder. She never got rid of any of their stuff. So I would notice like when I would go over to their place, like I would not like I feel a little bit off for like the next couple of days. And I
Mhm.
thought maybe it was just the stress of the environments or it's always like it's always a stressful environment in general.
Mhm.
Um, but now I'm thinking maybe there was mold there too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I recently had an experience at my parents' place too, where my sinuses were just going crazy. I was like, okay, something's in the air. Or I was even thinking too, like, is there something in the ventilation systems? I'm not there like anymore, but that all subsided almost like immediately too. So yeah, I think like our bodies tell us so much, and like I think like that change in environment can also tell us so much. Like, or even like what you mentioned with like the juice, like it brought down the symptoms by a certain percentage. Like even just those simple things, if we just like listen to them, like it actually just guides us to like what we need to do next. And I think that can be like so powerful. With all of your experiences, I know you've worked through a lot of different things. Do you plan on implementing like any kind of mold like education or awareness like with clients, or or would you view it more of like you have this experience, so if you do meet someone that you think has mold or has symptoms from mold, like you know what to do, like you know how to help them?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's kind
Mhm.
of like when I was going through my broken neck, I didn't think that I was going to start working with people in pain and
Mhm.
start, educating people that way. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say because I'm still, I'm getting out of the woods, but I'm not completely out of the woods yet. So, certainly there's more passion about it because I've experienced it and experienced how bad it was. So, there's going to be some education in general. It's probably not going to be a topic I shy away from. I don't think I'm ever going to go into the realm of like helping people like recover from mold and doing specifically that. But it is going to be more of like an education thing. Something that I did notice I forgot to mention was I was noticing my back with like when I was living like in my apartment, I started noticing my low back feeling like it was going to go out, and thought that was like really bizarre to me. And then I would do the things I normally do because I've done a lot of work with back injuries, and my stuff would work, but not as well as it normally would. And it took like more consistent like doing it for it to like stay better. And I would have clients that I noticed were less responsive, like they wouldn't respond as well as other clients, and I always wondered why. And the way my body responded reminded me exactly of some of those clients. And specifically, like what was interesting is my lateral stability, like doing like was like worse, like doing plank, like side planks, like my lateral stability was worse. And I was trying to figure out like why that area. So it was like obliques, like QL. And my theory is that it was because my kidneys were inflamed
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
from the detoxing.
Mhm.
And so I think that my theory is that if I see a client and they're not very responsive, I'm going to check their liver, I'm going to check their kidneys and see if there's any sort of soreness or inflammation. And then once I notice that, then I can be say like, oh, they're detoxing from something. And then go ask them, do you drink alcohol? Like, do you smoke? Like do you smoke hookah or something? And then that they say no, then I'll tell them, well, your body's detoxing. Questions what is detoxing from? And
Mhm.
then we go into, oh, it might be mold and all that. So that
Mhm.
would basically be like how I would go about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably more like I'm never going to shy away from the topic, but I would say it would be more of, educating where the education is needed. So just more of just another tool and another, area of knowledge for me as a practitioner, as a teacher that I can provide and give to my clients when the situation suits it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's it's always so great when we can take like our negative experiences, I guess, and then,
Yeah.
be able to help other people with them. And
Yeah.
I'm glad like you're open to like helping other people with this as well. And your like thought process is very similar to like how I would think actually too with patients. If someone wasn't getting better with just like this kind of like a standard chiropractic analysis and adjustment, then I would get very specific and start tracking it, like where I'm adjusting. I track the where I'm adjusting, but really looking at it and seeing if there's patterns. Like,
Yeah.
okay, why does T6 or T12 show up every single time? Every time I adjust you, it always shows up through a neurological, almost like muscle testing analysis. And it's like, well, and then I would start asking those questions. Oh, do you have digestive challenges? Are you having challenges with breathing? Or, and then usually something pops up and you're like, whoa, okay, you need to go see this person because there's something underlying that's still creating like a dysfunction in the body.
Mhm.
And yeah, exactly. The liver processes all the blood. So anything that's in your body. The
Yeah.
liver is like the first kidney is really big. Chinese medicine, too, like the kidney. I know there's a lot to do with like the chi and the kidneys being almost like the house of that, or like somehow
Yeah.
it's like the foundation of that. So it's interesting that like yeah, you're just really aware of everything and you're able to like tie it together and yeah, I'm just glad that you're able to like be positive about it. Maybe it doesn't always feel like that, but you're like able to take it and like sounds like help people with it too. Because that can be challenging where it's like, "Oh, why is this happening? Like,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
certainly I think, when I told my story of my broken neck and through like my own like through my own knowledge, through my own work, and being able to overcome that and knowing that was specifically what I did, that gave me a lot of confidence of dealing with challenges and dealing with adversity. So for me in this situation, it's not, oh, am I going to recover? It's I'm going to recover and we're gonna keep working until we figure this thing out. And so that was the whole thing was like we're always asking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why? What factors? What's going on? And so the constant asking of why and trying to understand what's going on has been really important. And, even like, I can still get symptoms. And I've now, like, through the past few weeks, I've figured out all the different factors that lead to me getting symptoms.
Mm,
And if I don't sleep well enough, I, I'll
mm,
be more light sensitive. If I don't eat enough, I'll be light sensitive. If I don't drink enough water, I'll be light sensitive.
mm,
And if I'm too acidic, I'll be light sensitive.
mm,
If I'm not doing enough sweating, I'll get light sensitive. The mycotoxins will build up in my bloodstream, and then I'll get. So, I through this like past few weeks, I've been experimenting constantly, relentlessly, trying to figure out why am I getting symptoms? Why do I feel good one day, then bad the next? And what are all these factors? And so now I finally have come up with this like recipe of all these things that leads to me getting symptoms. So it's actually required me to be like super dialed in on my nutrition, on my hydration, like super on point because I know that when I go down a little bit, my body goes into catabolic or I'm dehydrated, which adds extra stress to the body, or if there's just stress in general, then all that's going to lead to me getting symptoms, not feeling good. So for me to like even do stuff like these podcasts now, like it requires me to be dialed in on a much higher level than I've ever been in order for me to be functional and to feel good. But it came from my determination to solve this and figure things out. And I had an intuition a few weeks ago that if the mold enters through my nose, through my sinuses, maybe if I rinse my sinuses out, maybe that'll help.
mm,
And this was I went through a 9 day stretch where I was having horrible symptoms after normally feeling really good and having symptoms once or twice a week, trying to figure out what the heck's going on, testing different things like my vestibular system and just different things. And I bought a sinus rinse on Amazon for $11, did a sinus rinse, and 2 hours later, my symptoms were gone.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, what in the world?
Mhm.
Gone. It was like, and it was just like the contrast of like two different realities of like being completely debilitated and not being able to do anything, then suddenly no symptoms. And then I report on it, and my friend in Sedona who does detox, she's absolutely brilliant. Her name's Katrine.
Mm.
She messaged me. She said, if the science rinse helped, that means you have some sort of colonization in your nose, either Marcons, which is a type of bacteria that people can get after mold exposure, or mold, and you need to get tested. So I've done the test, waiting for the test.
Mhm.
Fortunately, I've been smart enough that the really smart decision I made was to buy the treatment before even getting the results.
Mhm.
I bought it before I actually bought the test.
Mhm.
And now it's been 10 or 11 days like since I submitted the test. And each day it's been proving to be a smart and smart decision, because when I started using those nasal spritzes, the Citri drops, I can get it if you want. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's from a company called same company that actually makes the candles. It's Microbalance Health Products,
Okay.
EC3. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I've been using those drops for like 10, 11 days. And as long as I'm hydrated and I eat enough, I'm symptom free basically.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about like diffusing essential oils? Like it's similar to the candle.
Oh, like humidify. Like, oh,
Yeah. Like have you ever
that's a good
because
idea.
that could be an option too. Like almost immediately when you
Yeah,
talked about the candle, I was like, whoa, essential oils. So there's a lot of essential oils that are anti like everything.
yeah.
So if it's in the
Sure.
air, it can be really helpful. Or if you're around
Mhm.
people that are sick, like I would say the research supports it, but then there's also like kind of debunky research too that kind of makes it seem like it's not helpful. I think it just is the quality of the oil and how it's
Yeah,
probably processed and like made into an extract essentially. But yeah, I wonder if like even doing that could be helpful and just like running it all the
yeah.
time or even
That's a
what's
great
coming
idea.
to me is like the air doctor things. I don't have one, but
Here.
it's like a filtration system. It
Okay.
cleans your air. And I've seen a lot of people actually in San Diego. I feel like a lot of chiropractors would talk about it, like putting it into their offices. And I think it was to like deal with like mold. And then I think COVID hit. So then they're like, let's do COVID, for COVID too.
Yeah,
Um, it's even coming to me, I wonder, uh, like heat or infrared with mold. I don't know if there's like a correlation or if that could even be helpful as well. But
there's like infrared sauna blankets and stuff like that.
uh-huh.
It's supposed to
Uh-huh.
be really effective. Um,
Mhm.
I have a red light, panel, and when I was trying to use it like during the whole mold thing, even with even if my back was to the panel, it would actually make my eyes hurt,
Hmm.
which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of shows that we have photoreceptors in our cells that are not in our eyes. But it was crazy because I just have this panel. It's just, yeah, it's maybe 12 by 12. And I just put it on my desk and I put my back to it, and my eyes would hurt. Even with a face mask on, even
Mm-hmm.
with a sleep mask on, my eyes would hurt. And I
I
couldn't,
almost, yeah, what it makes me like think of, and there's probably a neurologist out there that would like correct me on this. Maybe not, I don't know. But the nerves that supply the face are the cranial nerve, so vagus nerve is one of them.
yeah,
The optic nerve is what goes to the eyes. That's all processed essentially from the brainstem, but everything in the body is also processed through the brainstem.
yeah,
So that it's almost like no matter where like things were happening at, because of like the threshold being so low for the like optic nerve to fire it probably like yeah, it almost like didn't take very much and maybe it was like too much for the system to process. Like it was just
yeah,
not able to like process it and it created more inflammation on that nerve versus and then pain as a result.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so like you're dealing with the nervous system, and the nervous system is so complex. We
Yeah,
talked about that, but like and that's what I think makes it um like I find it very interesting too, because it just makes you ask more questions. And but it
yeah,
it really sucks when you're going through it yourself. Like when you're having to walk through it and you're like, you know. So
yeah.
I
The puzzle's not
feel
as fun what's
that.
happening to you.
What'd
The
you say?
the puzzle isn't as fun what's happening to you.
Yes, yes, yeah, I would agree.
You know,
Um,
with clients, the puzzle's fun. It's like just a little game. But when it's yourself, it's
Frustrating.
like, ugh, like
Yeah.
I'm playing this game, still playing the game, but
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I know we had to reschedule that first podcast because of all of this. So I'm
yep,
happy that we're able to do two of them now. And this is like a longer one in itself. So thank you
yeah,
for sharing all this information and kind of withstanding anything that's coming up for you. Or, I know it's not easy to like sometimes do these things when you're not like feeling 100%. So
yeah.
it's I'm glad you're able to share all this information with us.